All right, so welcome. Today, your learning goal, you'll be able to identify slope-intercept form from graphs. So we're going to work on finding our slope and y-intercept from graphs. So here we have our slope-intercept form. So I know we are used to seeing y equals mx, right? So today we're going to introduce non-proportional relationships. So this is a non-proportional relationship. Okay, because we have this extra piece, which is our y-intercept. So as we know before, our y is our output, which is also known as our dependent variable. Okay, m is our slope, which is also known as our rate of change. Our unit rate, change in y over change in x. Our rise over run. Okay, so since it's our rate of change, we also know that these repeat. So even in a word problem, it's something that repeats. So words that help us are per, each, and every, and so on and so forth. Okay, x is our input, which is also known as our independent variable. Okay, so we already knew all of these things. Okay, so now we're just adding a piece to it, which is our y-intercept. So B is known as our y-intercept. Our y-intercept is where our line crosses the y-axis. So it's where your line crosses your y-axis. Okay. It's also your beginning point. Okay, when x is 0, it's your y. So when x is 0, it's your y value. So that's obviously where your line would cross the y-axis, as well as like on the table when x is 0. Whatever your y is your y-intercept. Okay, and it does not repeat. It's a one-time feed. And a one-time feed. Okay. So remember, this represents non-proportional relationships. So if we take a look here, you can see the difference between proportional and non-proportional. Here, on a line in a proportional relationship, my line goes through the point of origin, which is 0, 0. So it goes through the point of origin. Okay. Your B, your y-intercept is equal to 0. That's how you know it's a proportional relationship. If it's a non-proportional relationship, your B is not equal to 0. Okay? Your B is not equal to 0 and it does not go through the origin. Okay? So, let's take a look at the first example. So I am going to be able to find my slope as well as my y-intercept. I am also going to be able to tell if this is proportional or non-proportional. So looking at this graph, looking at the line on my graph, it is proportional because it goes through the point of origin. So here I'm going to write that it's proportional. Okay. So it's important to know if my lines are positive or negative because that affects my slope. Okay. One way to remember if your line is positive or negative is through slope man. So if your line goes up and down from left to right, it is positive. If it goes down from left to right, it is negative. If it is vertical, your slope is undefined. And if your line is horizontal, your slope is 0. And it's kind of hard to forget this face. That's slope man. Okay? So looking here, I already know my slope is negative. So I'm going to put negative here so I don't forget. Okay? So now I'm looking at, I want to find my y-intercept first. So the first thing I'm going to do, I am going to highlight my y-axis. I am going to highlight my y-axis. Okay? I am going to see, where does my line cross the y-axis? My line crosses the y-axis at 0. Okay? It goes through the point of origin. Once I've done that, I can now complete my rise over run. Okay? So I'm going to find 2 points on my graph. I want to find 2 points on my graph that cross exactly at an X and exactly at a Y. Okay? So I don't want to choose a point here because I don't know exactly what that Y value is. So I'm going to start with my point of origin. Then I'm going to go to another point where I know exactly at an X and a Y. I should be able to cross a T through that dot and it should align with the lines. Okay? Now I can complete my rise over run. So I go down. I want to find the distance between this point to this point, this point to this point, so on and so forth. It's going to be constant. So I only go down once. So my rise is 1, but it's negative. This is a negative line. Then I go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I go over 5 spaces before I can even get to the next point. So my slope is in its simplest form, negative 1/5. So my slope is negative 1 over 5. And you can complete that pattern. You go down 1, go over 5, and you get to the next point. Go down 1, go over 5, and you're at the next point. Okay. Another example. Here we have a non-proportional relationship. I know that because my line doesn't go through the point of origin. I'm going to highlight my y-axis. My line crosses my y-axis at 3. So my y-intercept is 3. I'm going to choose 2 points. Okay. Well, here it's obviously more than 2 points. Okay. My line is positive. So now I'm going to do my rise over run. I go up 2. So my rise is 2. And I go over 2. So my run is 2. This needs to simplify to 1. 2 over 2 is 1. Up 2 over 2. You can even see if I did over 1, 1 and 1, same thing. My slope is 1 and my y-intercept is 3. Now you are going to go ahead and go to your Desmos activity, and I'm going to show you an example of what your work should look like on there. When you go to Desmos, you have 2 activities where you have to do a card sort, and then you have one at the rest of your activities. You are identifying slope and y-intercept. That's all I need you to do. So one thing that is helpful is if you use the lines, you do have to sketch your rise over run on your graph. You have to. So you have, I'm going to change this to orange. I'm going to draw a line on my y-intercept because that indicates me highlighting my y-intercept. Okay. Then I'm going to say, all right, where does my line cross the y-axis? My line crosses the y-axis at 5. So I'm going to change my color. I'm going to make a point. My line crosses the y-axis at 5. So then I'm going to find another point that crosses exactly at an x and exactly at a y. Okay? Let's find points that cross exactly at an x and exactly at a y. Okay? Now, I know my slope is negative, so I want to do my rise over run. And you can you can write this part on paper, but just put your answer in the box. Okay? But you have your rise over run, and it's also easier if you just do your lines. Okay? I'm going to take a line from here to here, and I'm going to show my rise over run. I know these are 2 different things, but you can see the same rate of change. So here I go down 2. So that's a -2. And I go over 1, 2, 3. So -2/3. And then here you can see I go down 1, 2, 3, 4. So -2/3 is in its simplest form. But you also have -4 over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over 6, which still simplifies to -2/3. Okay, so in your answer box, you are going to type m is equal. We're going to use the simplest form, which is -2/3. If you have improper fraction where it's like 2 over 1, your simplest form would be 2. And then I'm going to type b is equal to, and then I look where my line crosses the y-axis. It crosses at 5. B is equal to 5. Okay, so you're going to write your slope and your y-intercept in the box here, and you are going to show your rise over run on your graph.